Welcome to CBTS Tech Talk. I'm the producer, Lance Hart. Today, we'll be talking about navigating your Microsoft Teams voice migration. And as always, I have my esteemed colleagues, Justin Rice and John Lloyd. Justin, take it away.
Lance, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. John, welcome.
Thank you.
Good. It's been a while. For those who don't know, we are in a new studio here at CBTS. It's great. And, kudos to Lance and the entire marketing organization for putting this thing together for us. So like Lance said, we're going to talk about Microsoft Teams Voice today. Before we do so, I want to see how you're feeling about your Cincinnati Bearcats run ending last night in the NIT.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it prevents us as Bearcat fans from having to decide if we want to hang an NIT champion banner or not, right? Which is always an embarrassing look when a school does that. So we didn't have to join our friends up the road in Cincinnati of doing such things.
Yeah,
so,
what he's referring to is Xavier University, who won the NIT last year, but they are still in the Sweet 16 this year, so we're excited about that. But a big matchup tomorrow against Texas. So let's talk about MS Teams Voice. Huge topic. You really can't go into any meeting these days with a client or otherwise without talking about Microsoft Teams Voice. You've been in front of a lot of clients on this topic over the last 18 months, 2 years, something like that. And one of the key things that I think we kind of gloss over, or we started to gloss over, but now we pay a lot of attention to, is exploring, the key areas that organizations need to consider whenever they're beginning their migration plan to Microsoft Voice. It's not as easy as just, let me just move my users over and call it a day. There's a whole lot of nuance that exists there. So I'm going to talk through a few different things, ask you some questions, and we can just have open dialogue as usual.
Sure.
But to start, I want to, ask, let's talk through our clients that we work with every day, and the necessity to get a full understanding of what they have. So I think we run into organizations who say, listen, I want to move. How do I do that? I think it starts with an inventory or kind of looking at their assets. What do you think?
So I think you said something in your intro of users, right? And we make this assumption that your PBX is users. It's only users. Yep. And that is, as you start this migration to Microsoft Teams that are really identity tied, right, to a employee with a phone number with an E3 and E5 license, right? So that's the first thing is let's start with assessing the users. Do I have the licensing required? Am I Microsoft A3, E3, A5, E5, right? Whatever your industry is. But am I entitled for voice? So that's the first thing. Yep. The second thing I want to start to understand is in my current environment, what are my phone numbers? What do I own from a DID standpoint? Where do I have my own, maybe I'm extension and I don't have DID. So some things that maybe aren't going to be done the same way at the end user. And then it's starting to understand what is not a user, right? That's in my PBX today. What are other functions? Could be something like call recording, could be things like analog gateways, door buzzers, overhead paging, these things that we've utilized a PBX as cloud control or call control for that are starting to go away. So it starts with licensing inventory. Then we start looking at hardware inventory. And the number one mistake I see customers make is with Microsoft Teams, I'm not going to need phones. I will tell you, for customers I've talked to who said we're going to have zero plastic on the desk, they have about 20% to 30% get plastic. The ones who say we're going to have 20 to 30% end up with 50 to 60. So starting with an inventory to understand what do you have, what's your PBX doing for you today, what are your users and how are they engaging in that PBX today, and physically how are they connecting to it. That's kind of the starting ground for what do I have today.
So it sounds like, oftentimes we go in customer conversations or client conversations and we say, okay, let's talk through current state, let's design future state and build out a path to get there. I think what we're seeing is we go into conversations a lot of time and the future state's been determined. We've made an investment in Microsoft. We know we want to be there. I've determined my future state. I don't really know my current state, but what you're saying is, hold on a second. You really got to understand your current state to see if your defined future state is even applicable to you.
Yeah, I mean, the voice, here's what's changed, right? In our last session, we had Chris DeBrunner join us, and we talked about how every employee is a firewall, and you build this security posture around that concept. It's the same thing. Every employee is now a PBX. And so in the past, when you made a change from OEM A to OEM B, right? I want to move from this voice platform to that one, or I want to move it from my data center to the cloud. you weren't necessarily changing the function or the job to be done, why you hired a PBX. That's different with Microsoft. Microsoft now is not saying I'm hiring a PBX. You're saying I'm hiring an entire stack of Microsoft 365. It's my collaboration. It's my OneDrive. It's file sharing. It's video. Why don't you just go ahead and add a phone number to it? So I think the difference is Microsoft and Teams Voice is really driven at making your end employee its own PBX, because everything else in that Microsoft stack is identity based to your end employee. And that's perfectly fine. And there's a ton of value to that. And at the end of the day, that's what customers, meaning when I say customers, your end employee, right? If you're the IT leadership, your end employee wants that autonomy to work off of their cell phone, to work off of their laptop, to work from anywhere and have this seamless experience. Where we say, okay, slow down though. There are still other things that, when you hired your PBX, you hired it to be a PBX. You didn't hire it to be a extension of this specific identity or user. And that's where we want to come in and say, let's slow down.
Yeah.
Let's interrogate your PBX. What are the third-party apps maybe that are plugged in? Things like E911, recording, right? These things that you built a ecosystem around your PBX. That's great that we're moving the DID for an end user to their cell phone or laptop. There's other things, and that's where we always start is what are those other things?
So I was going to ask that question. My next question was going to be around, okay, well, it sounds like some sort of an assessment, whoever the provider is the right approach, but you just highlighted something that a lot of organizations have decades of history of integrations into their business. Depending on it could be analog lines, it could be, some room software, whatever. They have integrations that can't be left out in this.
It's not only that. It's stuff that, yes, you are correct. And sorry to jump ahead of your question in kind of my opening. It's not just what else is left behind. It's also this concept of what needs to stay in place. Like, do I get this benefit if I still have to keep a PBX on-prem to do this or that? And so finding the right partner, one of the things we see with customers typically in that enterprise space was very self-contained because of exactly what you said. It was such a custom-built ecosystem. I may have built it around my on-prem PBX, but I plugged in all these other things. We are seeing more and more people come and say, I need help in managing it. And I'm sure we'll kind of talk through this today.
Yeah.
When we talk about every employee becoming a PBX, think about this fundamental shift. I had a piece of plastic sitting on my desk that had an Ethernet cable running to a managed switch that had a fiber uplink to some data center or rode across a private MPLS network back to my data center, where I then had private carrier trunks SIP trunking into the PSTN over layer 2 or layer 3. Pretty easy to maintain environment, right? As far as it's not working, couple of places to go check. I want you to think, as we talk through this today, think about now that getting that phone call of it's not working. Well, what if I started my phone call on Teams at my house, on Wi-Fi, on my laptop? And then I went to go pick up my coffee order, and I moved it to my cell phone on LTE or 5G, got in my car, drove there, all while holding that call, got to the coffee shop and connected to their Wi-Fi. Now when I call in and say, my meeting this morning, my phone call this morning, it was bad. Where do you go from an IT standpoint, right? And so there's a lot of things that come into play. It's not as simple as, I always encourage people not to think of Microsoft Teams Voice as a replacement to what they were doing with their PBX today, as much as it's an extension to your employee of what they're doing with the Microsoft stack today.
Yeah. So through that extension, do you see companies that out of the gate can go all in to Microsoft Teams Voice, or do they step through it in a hybrid model for some period of time?
Yeah. So certainly it's a phased approach, because there's the hardest part to change, as much as, we'll come in and do a network assessment and make sure the network is great and all of those things. It's the end user change management, right? So one of the things we see is, let's identify a group of users who are using soft phones today or heavy cell phone users today. Obviously, since 2020, there's been a lot of shift and change in how people utilize their phones. So maybe it's ripping a group of users who are already using a soft client on their PBX today and with a headset. Yeah. Maybe it's your contact center users that are light PBX users, but much heavier from a standpoint of the actual contact center. and then looking at what is the job function. And this is where I talk about every employee being a PBX, right? What are the functions that can't be duplicated onto Microsoft Teams and need to stay and be evaluated? A lot of that, a great example, and there is support on the third-party SIP gateway. You can run like an ATA for analog, but one of the things is, should you stay on analog to your fax machine, or should you go to an e-fax server? Should you stay on analog to your security panel, or should you be going to LTE? So I think there's certainly decision points that need to be made. I think Microsoft is very much designed for voice in the future, more so than trying to be backwards compatible to voice of the last 15 years.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, voice of the future.
Hey guys, on that note, we had a question come in about what kind of security considerations should be taken into account when moving critical voice applications to the cloud.
So great question, and it depends on whoever asked it. It depends on if they're a network person or a security person. They're gonna have a different stance, right? So first, we don't want voice going through a firewall, right? I don't want stateful packet inspection. I don't want to rip apart a voice packet. And so typically, if voice is sitting behind a firewall, we're going to ask you to open up those ports or target IP addresses. You're typically going to see whether the protocol, whether you're looking at like WebRTC for a remote soft phone or encryption throughout the phone call, that is, for me, the security component. Even if I say I want to bring all of this back to my network, right? The great thing you can't necessarily solve for is LTE and my personal device. And you can, again, I don't want to go down, we had the security conversation with Chris last time. I don't want to go into running Intune on a mobile device and locking down where the application will live. But in short, we want to encrypt that phone call, which are native things with Microsoft Teams over the internet. And one of the things of fortifying the network and creating the best network performance possible is not sending voice through a firewall.
Hey guys, and one other question that came in is really a comment, and I feel really great about saying this to you, but it says every time they turn their head, the sound drops, so their voice is continually up and down. So I'd say move those mics a little closer to your mouth, buddies.
Yep. All right.
I feel like producer Lance paid somebody good feedback, but also
Lance doesn't like to yell at us. He just has other people do it. No, just kidding. Thanks, Lance. All right, so I do want to talk through about the internal gaps. So I started my career as a voice engineer. Coming out of the military as a voice engineer was my first job. My sole purpose in life was to manage, maintain, operate voice infrastructure, right? I think now what we are seeing is we are asking, or our customers are asking their systems folks, the folks who manage their Microsoft relationship, et cetera, to now become voice experts. That seems like, while it's not a huge leap, it does seem like that there's gaps that exist in the current IT ecosystem, at least the way we've been structured as an industry for the last number of years.
You're not only are you right, I think Microsoft knows you're right. And this is where you kind of see Operator Connect being the next advent. And we are an Operator Connect partner. In the beginning, right, when it was Microsoft Direct Route, it was this concept of your Teams admin center, you go into Microsoft Teams because you go in there and you configure, our Azure AD, or you configure all of the other stuff Microsoft, and this has Microsoft's logo on it. A wildly different environment as far as understanding how to build out call trees, auto attendance, features inside of a phone. So while you can go in and click the license, right, to say, oh, they're E5, they're entitled for it, now you have the voice license, that expertise, it is much more about being a voice expert than it is about being a Microsoft expert. And with Operator Connect and the work that we do in kind of our professional services engagements of helping customers get from where they're at to where they want to go, is really driven at that. We're going to bring the voice expertise. We also have a lot of Microsoft expertise as well through the full stack, but specifically to voice, you may have a great Microsoft team. If they're not used to voice, you may not be optimized out of the gate as far as setting it up. And we have a lot of customers who say we can run it ourselves, but somebody with voice expertise needs to come build it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So that's on the employee side, at least on the IT employee side. What you talked a little bit about kind of change management of the end users themselves, or training or enablement around the end users themselves. Similar to how we talked with Chris last time on security, how do you get employees excited about things that they look at as intrusive? That's not the conversation, but how do you get employees excited about a move to something like MSTV?
I think it's the concept of adding one more tool into what they're already using today. I don't think any employee likes to sit down and open 7 different applications. I want to open this application for chat, and then I'm opening this application for my soft phone, and then I'm opening this application for, my files, right, my shared drive, and I'm opening we look at Microsoft really as being able to be this control hub, right? Being able to be a single platform, whether I want to plug other applications into it natively, like other Microsoft applications, or all the third-party integrations that Microsoft Teams has. And so we're seeing more and more of our customers, and their customers, meaning their end employees, really like this concept of using Microsoft Teams as a hub. And so moving voice into that, it's just one less thing that I need to deal with.
I think there's something to be said there around like the consumerization of Microsoft, meaning like us as consumers out in the marketplace, when we're consuming an app on our phone, we like it to all be there. It doesn't matter if that's Netflix or Facebook or Instagram. We kind of like to have that stuff readily available for us. And now Microsoft is kind of doing the same thing for the business user, bringing it all together, having that one app experience for all the different workflows you need to have. Voice is another one of those application experiences that just gets put into the ecosystem.
Yeah, and then for those users who do resist it, by resist it meaning I want a piece of plastic still on the desk, that's perfectly fine. I mean, there's 4 or 5 different OEMs that make Teams-specific hardware, Teams-specific phones. There's also some capabilities and ways to reuse existing investments, right, with that third-party SIP gateway I think I talked about a little earlier. So you want plastic on your desk, that's fine. But when you go home, you can still use your cell phone, or you can still use your laptop, or when you're traveling for work. And so you can easily create this hybrid sort of environment. Typically, it's like I said, it's 70-80% are comfortable not having a phone. But I've had multiple customers tell me there will be no plastic in our environment. I'm waiting for the day. I've yet to see it.
So let's talk about the plastic in the environment then. You touched on it briefly, but if I'm a customer and 2 years ago I made an investment into a number of phones that I'm asking you to reuse in a Microsoft Teams deployment, what's your answer?
So, sure, maybe at your own caution, right? So Microsoft does have support for certain vendors, certain specific phones, and there may even be some caveats to it. So let's say, for example, we run into a lot Cisco Call Manager on premise, right? That's not running what they call the multi-platform phone or the MPP. So you need MPP firmware in order to register that to the Microsoft third-party SIP gateway. Additionally, the Microsoft third-party SIP gateway doesn't have complete full functionality. Certain things work, DTMF tones, inbound, outbound, 911. So we see a lot of customers think manufacturing. Maybe I'm in an environment I need to, for safety regulations, I need to have a phone on a pole every however many feet. And that's run with analog today. I don't want to rewire. I need a phone there. I don't want to buy an expensive new phone that's running this Microsoft Teams load. I need it there basically in case of an emergency. That's really the candidate for I want to register that and reutilize that. Typically, though, there's not some huge barrier to entry because it is only 20% of your users that need phones. There's not like you're throwing out a huge investment to go make another huge investment.
Yeah. But that stuff I think that you uncover in that kind of assessment design phase of an engagement is, okay, well, what do you want to use? Can you use it? Does it make sense to use it? That sort of thing. Let's see here. How are we looking on time? Okay, so we're about 20 minutes in. Lance, do we have any other questions that have come through?
We do not have any other questions right now. Yeah.
Okay. John, let's talk through, what have you seen go really right in a project migration and something that's gone very poorly?
So with anything, right, failure to plan is planning to fail, right? So where we see success is having that first assessment of understanding everything from what are your Microsoft licenses and entitlements, right? You might have common area phones. They don't have an E5 license on them, right? Yep. They don't have an email account. Those go really well when our customers sit down with us. We go through an assessment. They bring in our Microsoft professional services team to come in and understand their Microsoft licensing and entitlements, interrogate their existing PBX, look through what are the third-party like recording, like E911, like analog gateways or overhead paging, and really document it. The next is, where do we identify and see gaps? Well, a lot of times I mentioned it's on the network. So again, what goes really well, whether it's your team or our professional services team, we have a great networking team that can come in and do a network assessment and make sure you're ready to move from this environment where everything was hardwired and controlled into kind of this chaos of everything's connected wirelessly. What wireless we had a customer that we really had to force a bring your own device network because they were using the guest network, which was heavily oversaturated and leading to the it's not working conversation. The next becomes understanding what's different. You may have gaps. When we do that PBX interrogation, it's not just to say, oh, you have recording today. Maybe it's to say your existing PBX does it this way. Well, Microsoft does it that way. And so that's where we then have our professional services team come in and help build it out for you, hand you a working perfect model day one, and then decide, okay, what else can go really well? Project management, helping these users cut over. And so again, back to the PS side of it, right? It's getting that plan in place, understanding what I have today, understanding what those gaps may be, and then building a plan of how I actually roll it out. And then we can have the conversation of what does day two look like? Now that we've got you here, are you good to run on your own or do you want us to continue? And so the reverse of what doesn't go well, I would say we did one of these and producer Lance played a big role. There was a big gap, we didn't realize, and it had to do with overhead paging. And luckily, Lance built out our studio and he was able to build out a multi-zone paging hodgepodge to be able to make it work. But that was one of those things of today, it was integrated to the PBX. That was super easy to do. Well, now it's in the cloud. And so that was a miss. It was in a warehouse, in the environment. And so that's a good example. And luckily, shout out again to Lance, not only for yelling at me about my microphone, but helped us out of a bind on that one.
Hey, no problem, buddy. No problem. I do have another question that came in. Is an SBC crucial to the success of Microsoft Teams deployment?
Love that question. It depends on what you're doing with it. So let me start with kind of an overarching, my stance, which is probably each person has their own. If I am moving to the cloud and I'm moving to Microsoft Teams because I want this omnipresent, always on environment, I want my employees to be able to work from anywhere. I want them to be able to be connected no matter where they're traveling or on vacation or whatever. Why am I bringing that back into my network? And that is where my SBC sits. There are certainly some functions. So let me make sure I put a bow on that. I firmly believe we should be registering our devices to Microsoft over the internet, and then from Microsoft to, in our case, Operator Connect, I think is the right platform, voice-specific Microsoft tenanting. There's Microsoft Direct Route you could do as well, which is essentially SIP trunking. That Microsoft Direct Route, that SIP trunking can be done to your prem to an SBC if you want. But again, now I'm at home coming back into my network to get to my SBC to go to the cloud. So to me, fundamentally, the idea of an SBC in my network defeats the benefit that moving to Microsoft Teams brings. Now, with that being said, there are use cases. Survivability is a great example of a use case. I want to run SBCs running Survivable Branch Appliance, which is Microsoft's SBA, or just to have a secondary provider. I want Operator Connect from CBTS in the Microsoft tenant. I'm going to then get Microsoft Direct Route from a competitive SIP provider so that I've got some diversity there. And if we were to have an issue, I can run off of that. Maybe I want to put that is one of my answers to analog. I don't want to register to a third-party SIP gateway. I do have concerns about interop testing. There's an audio codes SBC. There's a ribbon SBC that has been fully interop tested, and I can take FXS off the back of that, and that can be my analog. So there are real reasons where an SBC could be utilized. Typically, it's for integration to third-party things where they can then natively register to Microsoft, or it's for resiliency and survivability. At its core, Operator Connect to Microsoft Teams, take your environment out of the mix. Let your employees connect without your network.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you there, John. I do have another question that came in, and I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, but they're asking, does it really matter what kind of physical phone system they have today? What PBX they are on today? Does that make a difference whether or not they will be able to or not migrate to Microsoft Teams?
Let me take it and you provide color. I don't think it necessarily makes a difference. It depends on what you're using. We talked through that current state, future state mapping. When we go through an interrogation of your PBX, and we're going to look through the features, functionality that you're using and what integrations you're using within that PBX, that's where you're going to be able to answer that question is what are you doing with it? And then we'll decide so on the surface, no, doesn't necessarily matter, but that could change and you may have to deploy some sort of hybrid environment depending on what your requirements are.
Yeah, it's spot on. There's no existing PBX today on-prem that would say, well, you can't go to Microsoft because of it. Through that interrogation, through network assessment or voice assessments, through all of that planning work I talked about, you may, depending on what you have and how you're doing it and what you're doing, you may have a different percentage that can easily move over, to Microsoft. But there's nothing that would preclude you.
Yep.
I got another one. Have you seen a large increase in the transition to Teams and other VoIP or UCaaS since the FCC pushed to end POTS lines starting August 2022?
So in short, I would say no, only because so many telcos have been ahead of this. Like it's been, from our side, I think we got, very ahead of it. Started in 2017, I think.
Those notifications are getting rid of POTS. I mean, every major ILEC out there has been trying to get copper out of the ground, for POTS at least, for a number of years. So that, we're already kind of ahead of it, but then we just started the market share that Microsoft has covered is just rapidly forcing market adoption anyway. So I don't know that that's been a true driver.
No, the POTS thing, what I've seen I've seen a lot of people forcing their maybe legacy vendors to adopt LTE and 5G. I've actually seen SD-WAN be a huge uptick from some of the POTS stuff. Think about like a retail store, right, that has POTS lines for things like fire or security, those sorts of things. I need to keep my network up. SD-WAN's helped always keep the network up. There are some providers out there that are delivering POTS in a box, which is just SIP to analog termination and making sure that they can tweak it for the frequencies of in-band and out-of-band. But for the most part, the Microsoft adoption has just been, as people move to Microsoft 365, I would say it's like the day Exchange moved off your prem, that was when Microsoft Teams and obviously COVID drove a lot of the collaboration.
COVID and mobility in general. Yeah.
Yep, for sure. Listen, we're coming up on time. If you have any other questions, please get them in. I'm going to say something and I'll give you a parting thought too. But for me, what's most exciting about all of this that we've talked about today and the chairs that we sit in is that this isn't a easy problem to solve. This is actually a lot more complex than what you would think when you read a white paper on the internet. There's so many different nuances to make this migration successful. That's why we wake up every day, right? Because these are challenging, exciting things for us to solve. You shared a lot of information today that I found it helped me improve my knowledge, but I'd like to hear your parting thoughts.
I tell people going into a Microsoft engagement, today, Microsoft Teams Voice is what your employees want for the most part. Obviously, that's a generalization. But it's easier to use. It adds into their existing platforms they're using. If you're a Microsoft shop today, and maybe you're even entitled and licensed for it, Microsoft, you have to go in with that lens. That Microsoft Teams Voice is an extension of your Microsoft stack for your end employee. And so if you have use cases in your PBX today that aren't an employee, that aren't an email account, we may need to solve for those. Some of them can be solved on Microsoft. Some of them maybe you solve by keeping something on-prem or migrating to a new technology. Yep. And one of the benefits that we do when we come in is we have multiple tools, right? There are multiple platforms. So where Microsoft is a fit, we deliver that with our Operator Connect. Where SIP trunking is a fit, we can deliver with Microsoft Direct Route. Understand there may not be a one-size-fits-all, and that's not because of the fact that it doesn't do the things you need it to do. But in the past 10 years ago, you bought a box, and that box was your phone system. It was your answering machine. It was your auto attendance and IVR. It was your contact center.
Right.
And now when you go into an enterprise environment, you may see 7 different technologies to get best of breed. This contact center in the cloud, this IVA platform is, in their chatbot, is different than what my contact center was. My PBX is different for my on-prem environments than it is for my workforce, working from anywhere. And that's okay. Our job, what we try to do is help customers get that best of breed and put this management around it, not only through our professional services on the front end to make sure we've accounted for everything and that everything goes smoothly, but also the opportunity to run the operational side as a cohesive managed service if the customer desires.
Very well said. I do think it's, even for our next episode, I would love to look at the call center part of the equation too, because I think that's a whole other beast that we should dig into.
And it's like, I remember, I mean, I've been doing this 12 years. It's not like I've one of like the old timers that's been here since the Merlin Magic days, right? No offense, Lance.
But whatever, you installed 3Com NBXs probably.
But if you look at, I mean, what was call center 10 years ago was basically an auto attendant that had a busy lamp field to show if I was on or off the phone. And now where they're at with workforce automation, workforce optimization, and chatbots, and ChatGPT 4 coming out and getting plugged in, like the contact center, it'd be a greght topic for the next one because it's crazy the growth it's had just in the last handful of years.
No doubt.
Well, I got a couple more questions that came in. One says that you'll see. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. They see so many folks migrating to Microsoft Teams. They want to expand their knowledge in that. Where can I get started? First off, I'd say you're watching now, and that's great. That's a great way to start. But guys, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, certainly. Microsoft has a lot of, for their product, they have a lot of information available. Where we go in a lot of times and we'll do kind of discovery sessions, education sessions with clients to kind of walk them through a lot of the nuance, because that's not all readily available on the internet yet. It's not on the Microsoft side. It's not necessarily on YouTube. So it's right now, education is frankly consultative.
Yeah, and that's so our professional services engagement actually starts with a 2 to 4 hour workshop that is of no charge to the customer, right? And that is really for this exact purpose. It's us coming in and go, these are the things, what we talked about here today in 30 minutes. Think about it, I just did a 2 to 4 hour workshop. So it's much more about what are you going to need to be thinking about? How does it work? How does it differ? We'll walk through how you do it today. We'll walk through what that is going to look like in the future with Microsoft Teams. We'll walk through what are those gaps. We'll walk through what do we need you to collect. And then, by the way, if you say that sounds like a lot of work, we'll go, here's an easy button and we'll come do it all for you, right? Yep. So I think, how to get educated. Yeah, Microsoft has their online classes. I think a CBTS workshop about specifically you and your environment, and being able to ask all the questions you want of an expert, and being able to go to a whiteboard and draw out your current environment, draw out how it works and how it differs on Microsoft. I will tell you, the first time I did Microsoft Teams, I won't go into, let's just say it was 2 years ago, and it was right into the deep end. Let's put it that way. Think of the most complex enterprise, life or death situation you can think of, and that's where I started. So skin knees certainly provide that, but we've got now 2.5 years experience, and we've got a team of 40, 50 Microsoft engineers. Let us come do that workshop. Let us come and have that conversation with you. I think it's a great way to get education.
Yep.
Hey guys, we have some great engagement today. We got questions that are still rolling in. So while questions are coming in, I think we're going to continue to answer them. One is with Microsoft's continues to add additional features, right? What is CBTS looking to add in the experience, such as SMS, e-fax, et cetera, on top of the Microsoft experience? Is there something that we add to that?
That's a great question. So there's stuff we already have out of the gate today, right? And so this is where we're kind of talking about what are those third-party things. We had a customer, I remember one time we were going through kind of our environment, and he goes, I don't care, I just don't want to have to go source it. Like we started to tell him, like, this is how we do it. And he's like, I don't care, I want a one-stop shop. So we offer things like mass notification. That's something that we can add on with our Microsoft Teams. That's something that CBTS adds to it. Call recording. We have a call recording platform that's integrated to our voice network in the Microsoft Teams experience. SMS is a roadmap that we are actively working on. I don't want to speak for that product team, but it's, I would say within a quarter, right? I mean, it's active. We're actively on it. I don't want to, I know Neil's probably watching this screaming at the screen.
They love when we commit to product launches.
Right. Somebody just heard me commit a specific date. SMS is coming soon. And E911, that's already there today. So to be clear, I wanted to address SMS because they specifically called that out. But today, call recording, CBTS provides. We have the ability to provide mass notification today. We have E911 for array bombs and carry law compliance. Those are things that we have consoling, receptionist consoling. We have integration to other contact centers, right? So we have pre-built multi-tenanted trunks to Genesis and 5.9s, and we have our own CX Sync intellectual property platform. So there's a lot of gaps that we close already today, but SMS is certainly a roadmap. Call it 2023.
The heritage that we have as a telephony service provider, we've been doing UCaaS for the last 25 years. We have the rigor for development and upgrades and enhancements to product sets. So we kind of already have that muscle memory. Now we just apply that same muscle memory to Microsoft Teams.
Yep. You kind of answered this next one with will Microsoft Teams eventually have a call queue technology similar to UCCX, Finesse, UCCE, some of those other platforms, or are we taking care of that with other products?
Yeah. So I think the answer is yes across the board. I think every OEM, I look at across the board and go, man, they do these things really well, but then they also still go and do those things, right? Because they want as much market share as they can. I think Microsoft is going to continue to grow. I think they've got a great CRM platform in Dynamics that they're going to continue to grow and integrate into the voice experience. And if from things not just like click the dial, but being able to kind of bring call recording and integration. So I think you'll see more and more from Microsoft continue to develop. That being said, we talked about the contact center space, and there's a lot of great ones out there from NICE in Contact, Genesys, Five9s, Twilio, TalkDesk, Zendesk. I mean, keep going, right? There's all these ones. And so we kind of pride ourselves on building connectivity into all of them so we can be your one-stop shop for SIP trunking to the prem, your operator connect partner to Microsoft, and then also your SIP provider to bring your own cloud, right, to your contact center. That being said, there seemed to be this, I mentioned 10 years ago, contact center was here and it was basically an auto attendant. And today it's here and it's expensive. Now it's expensive because it can, optimize your staffing schedule and save you money. It can be automated intelligence to your, end customer and reduce your cost there. It can look for opportunities to upsell or cross-sell and increase revenue, all the things that contact center can do.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, it's still really expensive. And there's this spot in the middle of customers who go, I don't need all of that. And so it went from nothing to this, insane Cadillac, Porsche, whatever your car choice is, right? Shout out Kia in the enterprise space. But we then look at, and we built our own product called CX Sync. And it's specifically designed for, while we connect into all of those Cadillac players, we can do so at a third of the cost and bring 85-90% of those same features. And so it's really customized to each customer. But I think that's the benefit of this world that we're in today. Between there's UCaaS, there's Microsoft Teams Voice, there's CCaaS, and you can build the wrapper that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's see. I think I have. Yeah. So this person says we are currently a CBTS customer, and their soft phones are on Webex. Is CBTS planning to change all customers to Microsoft Teams? They say they do use the Microsoft stack, so they can see where that would make sense. What do you guys? What are your thoughts?
Certainly not. I wonder how many of our executives are watching right now, panicking for what my response is going to be. No, certainly not. We are not going to change customers over unless there's a benefit where the customer wants to change over. We are actually Cisco Webex calling Managed Service Provider of the Year 2022. We have a huge presence with Cisco in the voice space as well. And there's use cases where one fits versus the other. So both Webex multi-tenant as well as Webex dedicated instance. Obviously Microsoft Teams. There's also, we have a lot of customers who go, we're using Cisco, but we want the interface to be Microsoft Teams. Certainly capable for that as well. We had a customer tell us, we have our collaboration on Teams. We have our email on Microsoft 365. I can't put my voice on it because if there was a Microsoft outage, I've got a problem where nobody can call me, nobody can email me, and we can't communicate internally, and we aren't willing to do that. And so we designed it's Webex dedicated instance so we can have things like subscriber, SRST, right, services in their environment with registration to the cloud. And then we built natively, if you use Microsoft Teams today, go into the app space and type in Webex. You can utilize Microsoft Teams as that front end, and the call control actually goes through Cisco Webex. So CBTS is not pushing our customers anywhere. We'd love to have a conversation with you of, is Microsoft a fit versus the platform you're currently on with us? How do we optimize the platform you're on? But to be very clear, CBTS is agnostic, and we are focused on solving customer needs and customer challenges. We do these conversations on things that we hear a lot. And right now we have a lot of our customers coming to us going, Microsoft said it's already included, So why is it so hard? And that's what we wanted to talk on. But absolutely not. We're so a huge Cisco partner as well.
Yep. So last question. This is really kind of dovetails right to what you're talking about. This person says they have a large transition from Cisco CUCM and Finesse to Teams and 5.9s. Long transition time. We will use direct routing to enable seamless communications between systems until fully transitioned. Then switch to Operator Connect when SIP goes away with Cisco. Can you comment on this approach? They'd like to know if that's a good approach.
Certainly. We do kind of the same thing, but more at a carrier level. So we utilize, so we're built out with Ribbon Suisse, with Ribbon PSX as the communication broker from our core, which is the same thing you're doing, right? So what we do is typically we'll go in and we'll build SIP trunking between us and you, the end customer. We'll integrate dial plans between our Ribbon and your Cube on-prem if you're Kukum, and we'll be able to, not only pass E164, but be able to do 4 or 5 digit dial and do that translation between the two. So what we like to do is go and build a SIP trunk and port all the numbers into us, and now that gives us the control out of PSX. I can decide where I want to point it to. You're essentially doing the same thing. You're just taking the carrier out of it and you're building that yourself. So Microsoft Direct Route to your Cube on-prem. I'd love to have a conversation on the side of that experience of Cube to Microsoft, because I've read documents. We'll put it that way.
But generally, I think they're doing the right thing. Whoever that is. But certainly, I think it's something that if you have any questions, want to bounce ideas off of us,
the approach is right. We just kind of offer an easy button where we could have done that work for you, right?
So I think that was our last question, guys. So if you guys want to wrap up, that'd be great.
Thanks, John, for coming today. These are awesome. We'll maybe table contact centers the next conversation we have. For all the listeners, this was phenomenal engagement. So thank you all today. Thanks for the marketing team and Lance for putting this together. And we will talk next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.